Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth and thank you for joining me for Exploring Vernacular Type in Hanoi, a presentation for Type Weekend. As I mentioned, my name is Elisabeth Kvernen. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Media Arts and Design at James Madison University, which is in Virginia in the United States. I lived in Hanoi from 2016 to 2020. Hanoi is a city in the country of Vietnam. And during this time, the urban landscape changed dramatically as much of the city's vernacular signage was taken over by a bland and uniform version of corporate advertising. The city was growing and has been growing at an incredible pace with new construction happening left and right. But at the same time, this traditional Vietnamese culture was existing side by side. So I began to document and photograph some of Hanoi's distinctive hand-lettered signs and typography, and for me this was a way of capturing and documenting this before it disappeared. So in this talk I'll bring you on a journey through the streets of Hanoi using these images as a guide. So join me for a taste of the authentic local typographic flavor of Hanoi. Today's talk won't go into a lot of technical details. Think of it as exploring a place that you may have never been to. If you have, please join into the discussion. I'd love to hear your perspective and thoughts. And this is a way of gathering type inspiration. So before we dive into the images, let's look a little bit learn a little bit about the Vietnamese script. So the script was Romanized. The writing system in Vietnam was Romanized beginning in the 17th century when Catholic missionaries needed to transcribe scriptures for their new converts. Before this, Vietnamese had been writing using Chinese ideographs in a script called Chữ Hán. Individual Chữ Hán characters are still written by calligraphers, in this image on the right, for example, for special occasions such as the Vietnamese New Year called Tet. These calligraphers are still present outside Buddhist temples, and this script is still studied for scholarly and religious purposes, but for all other reasons, the script in Vietnam is written in the Latin characters. But there are some modifications. So the alphabet is listed here on the left, and there are 29 letters, 7 of which, these ones on the right, are modified from what we might see in the traditional Latin script. And they have diacritical marks. Some are connected and some are not connected to the letter. There are also tonal marks. So these are in addition to the modifications of the letters. There is a rising tone, sort of a rising forward slash accent. There's a backward slash grave accent. There's one that looks like a hook, this sort of a question tone, a tilde accent, a dot underneath, which is a sort of a hard stop, and then there's a tone that has no accent, which has no markings. So all of these change the sound of the letter or the word, and they are paired with any letter modifications. So there is a great variety of different letter forms and diacritical marks than we may see in a traditional Latin script. I did want to cite my sources here and give a shout out for this book and website on Vietnamese typography by Donnie Chung, and that is the URL vietnamesetypography.com. It's been really useful for me as I learn more about this, and it's definitely the go-to resource, so I'd encourage you to check it out if you are interested in learning more. So Vietnam in context, I lived in the capital city of Hanoi. Vietnam is in Southeast Asia here, and Hanoi is in the north part of the country. It's a major metropolitan area. The 2021 population is estimated at 4.8 million, and with the larger metropolitan area around 7.5 million. In 1950, by contrast, the population of Hanoi was 260,000. So a huge amount of growth in the last few decades. And this rapid population growth has been accompanied by rapid development, lots and lots of buildings and lots of companies. The culture of Hanoi tends to be more traditional than its sister city of Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon in the south. But there is a growing influx of large companies and corporate advertising international brands. So a bit about the project. I began to photograph some of this Hanoi's distinctive hand-lettered signs and typography to try to document that before they disappeared. You can see here on the left what might have been more of a traditional signage for in Vietnam, spray painted on the building, written on the walls. And here, this is sort of graffiti slash signage spray painted on walls. This is sort of the intermediate signage, I would say, is very common in Vietnam today, sort of traditional, or simple type on a colored background. But more and more you start to see these international brands coming in, Lotteria, lots of Korean, lots of other Asian brands that are coming in. And this is really what a lot of the streets look like in Hanoi now. So the type that I photographed was really type in the wild. It's not produced by trained professionals, but it's still a source of endless creative inspiration, and a lot of it is just really truly unique. So for those of you who want to follow along on the map, well, I'll just reference this first. I did produce or document this all on Instagram to begin with, so if you'd like to check that out, my handle there is, or there's a hashtag Hanoi type. My profile is at @Kvernen. Where I have a few different projects going on, but if you want to check those out, you can. Also, I've compiled a map where you can see sort of a live version of where each of these signs is located, and I'll just pull that in here to give you a sense of what that looks like. So if you click on a certain section, I've organized the signs into different sections. So there's services, food, shopping, and community, and so different types of signs, and this will just show you where they are on the map, so you can click through and see more about them. And that is located at bit.ly link 3INENMH in case you want to actually see it on the map. So I guess we'll go ahead and look at some images now. So to start with the services section, this sign really captured my attention from the beginning. It was actually part of my inspiration for starting this project. I love the color differentiation here. This is for a cobbler, for someone who fixes shoes and sandals. And the sort of commercial culture of Vietnam is very entrepreneurial. So a lot of people will have multiple sort of side gigs. So maybe this is someone who has a little shop, but also they do cobbler work. And so they just affix the sign on the side of the road and went from there. The next one is similarly affixed to a light pole on the side of the road. There are more motorbikes in Hanoi than people, so services for that are very much in demand. This is someone who's pumping, patching, and fixing motorbikes and selling gasoline on the side of the road. This is for a sort of a service station basically behind my house. They had a little spot of land, and that they would change oil, fix bikes, and wash motorbikes here behind my house in an alley. Another service for motorbikes, pumping and changing tires and tubes. This is the major road that I lived off of, and someone had set up this on the side. You can actually see another little one here on a rock there, but very much just throw up a sign where you can. Again here, this is some kind of electrical box, and someone has put up a sign for fixing keys and locks. So they posted that right there and with their phone number. This is a really common type of sign, the spray painted phone number and basically some shorthand for someone who's fixing concrete drilling, doing concrete drilling and cutting, so it's perfectly appropriate that they have sprayed this onto a concrete wall. This next one is a Seom, which is a motorbike taxi, and so they've drawn this out in very nice proportional letters, and most likely it's on some kind of electrical box on the street, and so most likely they usually park right by it and would be prepared to take someone on their bike, should that person ask. This next one is similarly someone who's waiting around for, they haul cargo. When we actually moved in Hanoi, we used this type of cart, which is essentially fixed to a motorbike, and someone will throw your stuff in the back and move it around, and so that's a service he was offering with this really nice sort of calligraphy script here. This one is for a house for rent, an advertisement someone stuck outside their gate, and just love the colors and the precise forms of these letters that someone put together. This is a wall newspaper drawing center, and appropriately it is drawn on a wall. It's actually quite large, kind of hard to see the scale here. But just love that. That is a thing that people would still be learning. And this one is one of my favorites. This is the name of a power station that has been sort of stenciled onto the wall or drawn onto the wall here. It's not even advertising anything, but it just has, they've done a really elegant job of, and colorful job of documenting the name of this power station. Someone here is washing cars, and so Zuos Sea is the translation there, and so they may have stenciled this on the wall. This is actually quite large, and then set up shop here with a hose and a bucket, and they are washing your cars. The last service here is someone who's fixing keys. I actually got my keys duplicated at this shop. Super handy and helpful to have the sign. Next category we'll move into is a food category. So this is a shop that's advertising multiple types of dishes, from noodles on the left to bun, and banh mi is a sort of a, maybe you've had it before, sandwich, a baguette sandwich, and che is an iced dessert. So lots of different delicious options here, all detailed in handwritten type. This next one is using the basket. That's a traditional basket for serving food, to write the sign for chicken rice. A chicken rice dish was delicious, and just love how that M has just kind of been squished there on the right, morphed to fit into the basket shape. This next one again is using the basket for advertising their baked rice paper, for about 50 cents US dollars. And then this one with so much dimension to the type is advertising spicy bean vermicelli, which is a really delicious dish. This is a guy who set up outside my work, and he is selling different types of sweet potatoes. So this day they were long and purple, and the next day they were sweet, orange and sweet, from the city of Dalat. And I just love those signs. I love how he's drawn them out in this little spiky text here compared to the swirly letters of the purple sweet potatoes. This is honey, an advertisement for honey, written out in very typographic form of sans serif. Very clear and straightforward. Someone attached it to a tree. This is a coffee shop with some swirly rope letters called Mok. And then another coffee shop. This is Kang Cafe, which is, this K that almost looks like a V but has a lot of dimension and is very swirly, and the outline text. There's a lot going on here with this illustration too that I kind of love. This is a really typical sign, but I think I chose it for the color. Is advertising a nutritious rice porridge. But it kind of gives you a sense of some of the streets and what they look like, with lots and lots of type. This woman is walking around with a shoulder pole and two baskets where she's selling sticky rice cakes with sausage, and she's kind of written that out on a little almost chalkboard. And I love the sort of clear handwriting that she has there. This is a mobile cafe. It's sort of for a black bean sweet beverage that is all set up with ice and everything, and they'll mix it up for you there on the go, and then move from one place to another, sort of a proto food truck, but on a bicycle. Here's another example of what a typical little side shop might look like, with lots of layered and competing typefaces and words. So this is advertising a few different dishes, but one of them is vermicelli noodles, and one of them is banh mi, which is the bread sandwich. Here you can get iced tea on the street. There's a nice little stool, and you can just pull up your stool and get some iced tea. And then moving into the shopping category, this is a secondhand shop. Some of it's in English, so you can catch that maybe, but they're buying and selling, and it's got a bunch of different phone numbers. Lots of text there thrown at you. And this is one of my favorites, the Sandal Shop, called Zip, which is the word for sandals, and it has a tonal mark, a diacritical mark here for the tone, the rising tone, and they've used the sandal to be that tone in the letters, and just love that. Here's a sign asking people to respect local customs and traditions or culture, and I thought it was really nicely paired with this mural drawing, and it was in an area with a lot of foreigners, so perfectly appropriate, good message. This again is a community sign. In each of the local neighborhoods there would be a chalkboard on the wall, and whoever the community leader was would go over and they would write up the announcements on that chalkboard. And so this is just walking past, took a picture of one of these chalkboards and thought that was such a great example of public signage and such an unusual practice that we don't see, at least in the US. Here's another community-oriented sign. This one says, "No littering is allowed here. Take the trash out of the road and put it in the trash can." So as you can imagine, with that many people, there is some littering challenges at various points. So there's lots of sort of homespun signs encouraging people not to litter. Here's another one, "No littering is allowed," and that one's more of a spray-painted version. And another take on that is this on the toilet lid is a sign, "History has a culture of not leaving the trash in the yard." That's a rough translation, but essentially calling on this tradition that says, hey, we don't litter here. Another sign for not parking in front of the garage. This kind of thing springs up quite regularly because parking is definitely an issue in a large city. And then finally, this just house number that shows up on the side of an alley street, and that is a typical look for Hanoi because of the sort of layers of paint and the way that the humidity interacts with the concrete. They can be much decayed, those street signs. So I think that handwritten and vernacular type is increasingly rare in this modern world, with the growth of corporate advertising and consolidation of brands. And I think it's something worth acknowledging and celebrating and learning from. So I hope by spotlighting this, it will become something that we learn to value and preserve. And I also hope that you enjoyed this trip through some of the signs and alleyways of traditional Hanoi. Thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like to be in touch, you can find me on Instagram and as well on my website, elisabethkvernen.com. And I look forward to talking with you more and engaging with questions.